Hey folks, Steve here with another Dark Valley video. I'm going to hope to get a couple different ones accomplished this week, if I'm lucky, as we start rolling into the holiday season. Might lose some time, so if I can get a few knocked out here, we'll be in good shape. So we're looking at turn 21 today, and we'll see what's happening here. There's going to be, I think, some major changes along the lines here. With some major conversions for the Soviets. And I will say before we get started, so it sounds like, based on the feedback I've gotten, everybody who cares wants to keep to one turn per video to the depth that I'm going, which tends to be somewhere, depending on the turn, between 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes a little more than an hour. If I'm spiffy and I'm moving quick, I can maybe, keep it to 40 minutes if I'm not talking like I'm talking now and rambling and going on, and that's okay. So we'll keep this format and we'll just keep it going. So if I can get a few videos, maybe a week, if I'm lucky, then we could very well see this game complete through turn 44 sometime a few months from now, sometime in the new year, maybe the early spring, and I may even be able to do a lot more videos sometime in that time frame. I don't know. I've got to figure that out. So we're going to get through it, and I will say that I appreciate the comments on what folks are interested in seeing next, and a few people were commenting on Nevsky. I did read the entirety of the rules for Nevsky. They don't seem terribly complicated. It has its things to watch out for, but I think I could probably do some solitaire with it. There are ways that you can play with hidden information. You just don't play with those options for a solitaire game, and I think I could play something, and I might even be able to fit it on one of my separate tables over here and record it in parallel to this series. So I'll just have to see if that's useful and if that's what I want to do. I'm not sure for certain that's what I'll do next, but or what I'll do soon. But it is an interesting game, and I think it's worth talking about as a new design of a new series, and I think it's got some neat things to it, but it may not be for everybody. But, lots to see and learn on that one. So with the start of turn 21, it's time to take a look at the reinforcements to come, and I want to make sure I speak to this a little bit in terms of what can you expect coming in future turns. So I'm just going to move the camera down a little bit to where I've got this turn's reinforcement set. So for the Axis, they get a couple of small units, and they get another one of their SS Panzer units. I'll say SS, it looks like it's SS, black and white, I guess. The Totenkopf? I don't know. Totenkopf unit. I might have my mind frazzled a bit, so I might have that wrong, but okay, we get another decently strong Panzer unit, which is great. But by comparison, you can see that the Soviets have a lot of things going on in their space. So they're going to get one free tank brigade, which is all well and good. But this turn, which, almost was entirely red counters in my sorting of the baggies, are all guard conversions. So you can see we have, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 guard infantry corps coming on, and then along with that 6 infantry guard armies. Now, the way that this is going to work, and sorry I'm fighting with my camera stand here, we've got I want to convert guys on the map or in the dead pile to these, and then they will in turn be converted to this. And the conversion system is weird. Like, you have some options, right? Where are you going to move? Where are you going to take units off? How are they going to come back in? And how they come back in is like as reinforcements. So they're going to pop up in cities. So that might mean temporarily the line is thinned out because you're moving units off the board to be reorganized into these newly created units, but they're behind the front line. So there's a bit of delay before we get the firepower of these very strong units in place. And I do have to think about where do I want them. I may want to put a couple of these 14-5 units together and create a battering ram to break those holes open in the line and move guys through. And I'm not sure I'm totally well organized on the front lines to do that, and I may even need a turn just to kind of, like, in local areas, rearrange the units to create those braking forces. And that's really what both sides at this point probably should have been doing, or should be doing, is, okay, the front line is what it is. How can I, in the areas of movement that I'm allowed, or in general movement when the movement shit is up, how am I going to move my units in such a way, hopefully they're not being blocked by Zocs or whatever, but move them in such a way that I can concentrate firepower at a weak point and create that breakthrough opportunity. And at this point, the Axis is simply going to lose their ability to do that. This is the last year of the game that they'll be able to, the last summer in 43, that they'll have really any decent offensive capability, I suspect. And all of that will really just be to, trip up the Soviets so that they can't, they have a late start to pushing us back to Berlin in turn 44. So a lot of conversions. I'll have to figure out how to make this work, and it's going to take me, off camera several minutes to figure out where they're going to go and how I'm going to set it up. But I do want to point out that to come, there's not much left, to be honest. So if I look at the turn record track real quick, so we're on turn 21. You can see the marker, turn marker there, just behind that stack, right. Let's see if I get my finger on camera. You can see it right here. There's a handful of Axis units between there and turn 32, and turn 32 is like a nice little chunk of reinforcements, but that's really it. And then we also have, basically one more baggie of Axis units that cover turns 32 to 43, and there's not that many of them. Right. So the Axis are running low on new things to come, but the Soviets, by comparison, still have quite a bit more coming. And let's see if I can get this on camera. So we have, I separated in the baggies of Soviets, turns 22 through 30, 31 through 43, and you can see there are even more guard conversions to come, and fresh units, and air capability, and a strategic air capability, and more artillery. Yeah, so there's there's still even more coming. There's still even more coming. So, been watching for that shift in the balance of the game, and I think that's going to happen pretty strongly, I suspect. So we're going to look to do the reinforcements. I need to take a quick look here. So Germans aren't going to get any replacements this turn. And in terms of reinforcements, like we said, they're not getting a whole lot. I just want to make sure that I don't have any withdrawals this turn. Okay, we do have to remove Panzer Division, but we return the SS Toten Panzer Division, so we're going to swap out a unit, basically, but we'll have to put the new unit on a reinforcement point, being a supply marker, basically. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, we've had a nice little intro. I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to do all the reinforcements and replacements and strategic movement. So the Axis is going to get its pitiful reinforcements. It's going to withdraw the one unit. We're going to then do all the Soviet conversions and then the Soviet replacements, because they're going to get a whole bunch of replacements as usual. And then I'll do the strategic movement, which will probably be somewhat minimal. We'll shuffle a few guys around. It is a mud turn, so it'll be something to think about as I get into the turn. And then when we come back, we'll look at the action shed recipe and get the game a-rolling here. So we'll be right back in a second. Okay, so we are back after placement, and it's kind of hard to tell from the map. The map doesn't look that much more red, but boy, I got a lot of Guard Infantry Corps out of the game. Why is that? Well, I turned, as I went through, by the way, the dead pile is basically empty at the moment, which is a really weird position for the Soviets to be in at the moment. But basically what happened was, I removed from the dead pile all the rifle divisions to put the guards in, and then I had to start picking some off the front lines, and I tried to pick the best places, but I had a lot to pick off, as Ted warned, that all these rifle divisions are going to be gone before too long, and the vast majority of them have now been pulled off the map. So the Guard Corps came in, and then it was time to put the Guard armies in, and basically, because you can do the swap out before they're placed on the map, all the new Guard Corps that I created never saw the map. They were simply exchanged for the Guard armies. And so the only thing really coming on the board were the 6 Guard armies and a couple of leftover Infantry Guard Corps, and they've gone into the cities for reinforcement. And then I also used my 4 steps of rail to move a few units closer to the front line to actually make use of that tremendous combat power that they have. So for the Soviets, it's kind of a really weird situation. In fact, there are a couple of weak points in the line now because of that, but they're mostly in areas where the Axis really can't make much use of it. But it will be important that I get units back to the front line with that exchange in place so that things can keep moving. And some examples of some of that are like, down here, now there are some infantry armies down there instead of the Corps, but I had to kind of get them in place just to keep Krasnodar from getting messed with. But likewise here, this thinned out, which ain't great, but I do have a lot of force coming this way. And the whole way through is kind of an interesting situation for the Soviets to be in. And when it came time for replacements, because the things that I replaced are out of the game, I couldn't bring them back with replacement points. And I think I ended up with something like 6 replacement points that are wasted, because I brought everything onto the board, and all of the existing units that I could flip to full strength, I did pay for and do, but some of my other reduced units are in the front line and they can't be replenished, so I ended up with like 6 points. I couldn't do anything with them really. That unit over there is an airborne unit, and I think I'm supposed to have removed him from the game when he was destroyed, but I just have him in the dead pile. That might be a mistake on my part, so I could maybe restore him. But the main thing is, I got to that point where it was like, well, now I don't have anything to spend my replacement points on. Not sure what to do with that. I did put the armor corps that did come in as a reinforcement into the Stavka Reserve, so we at least have something that we can use Stavka for. If we need to throw in an extra high mobility unit, we can throw them in there, but I don't see where that will be as useful anymore, because we're going to be going on the offensive as the Soviets over the next so many seasons. These last couple of turns will be Axis turns potentially, but I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation, and there are some cases, like I said, along the line where the Axis could attempt to make some activity here, but you can see the clusters of red are just going to make that really tough, and whatever action can happen up here won't really matter, because at the end of the day, the Axis will just begin and get outflanked once those cracks start to really form. The strategic movement was really straightforward. The Axis really didn't have much they could do, though I pulled a unit out of this area here to put in Orel, but I couldn't put it adjacent to those units, so it's not in Orel, it's right next to it, and I'll have to go in, I guess, and hope that they can make their move to replenish the strength in the city, because it really is on the knife edge there against the strong units coming in. So yeah, that is all of the strategic movement and stuff. The air bases, I haven't flipped them to their not done side yet, but they're not going to move. They're about where they need to be. So I'm gonna pause and get the chits together, but we'll take a look at the chit recipe here for the turn. Okay, well, here's the chit recipe for the turn, and let me tell you, not a lot going on. I guess I'll throw a couple of things in here worth calling out. So for the Axis, they just have a regular move and a regular combat, and that's it. So not much, but oddly, the Soviets aren't much better. They have a move and Stavka, which, they always have Stavka, but there's not a whole lot of combat activities available to them this turn. And of course there's logistics, and technically the Axis still has the Manstein chit that they could use if they wanted to for some additional activities, though I've been kind of keeping it reserved, knowing that once you use it, you kind of don't have access to it for a while. It might be good to use it this turn as the Axis to do something, if we can figure out what that is. Maybe to help boost up Orel, that might be the choice. So it's interesting that like the Soviets have initiative, but what are they going to do with initiative? That the most they can do is throw the reinforcements on the board or just move. So if they are picking their first chit, okay, let's say we pick move, right? Well, we move our guys, and then that's really all the Soviets are going to do. The rest of the turn is going to be for the Axis, and they could actually, if they decide to, whip some things into shape. And it's funny, looking at the recipe now, maybe the reinforcements where I put them maybe didn't matter as much because it's such a slow turn. Now I will say, because this is March and April combined and it's the muddy weather season, there's going to be restrictions on what we can really do anyway with movement and everything else. So it's going to be kind of a slow turn here, maybe a short turn as I go through it. But I will point out that if we're going to look at the chit recipe for the forthcoming turns, so if we're here in March and April 1943, which is where we're at, we look at the next turn, so we get into the May-June time frame, and this is really where the next couple of months are going to be pretty active. Each side's going to have a lot more, two-mover combat, Panzer Army, combat Zhukov, deep battle, all that stuff is coming. But and it's kind of interesting to see, like you can see, like, oh look, we're getting, the recipes are going to be the same across multiple turns as we start heading towards the rest of the game. And it's funny that the differentiation of the chit availability changes so much through those first first half of the game, really, first 22 turns, and then the remaining 22 turns are much more the same. But you can see there's quite a bit of chit activity across those units. And if I look, even the muddy weather turns in 44 look like they're going to be pretty active. So this is just oddly a really reduced turn of activity. Maybe, and because I really don't know off the top of my head, maybe the weather, the rainy season in 1943 was just particularly bad and muddy, and other springs were not as bad, is maybe what that's reflecting. Not sure. So yeah, and it turns out Soviets, definitely have the initiative this turn. So what are they going to do? I guess they're going to move. So I'm going to conduct the move. I'm going to put the Stavka and the Manstein markers where they will go. The Axis will need to decide what they want to do with that. And then the rest of the Axis activity markers will go into the cup along with logistics, and we will see what comes. And just as a reminder, the Axis chits here are not or chits. They are combat and that's it, or move and that's it. So they will have no choice. But again, I'm not sure that will matter too much this particular turn, just with what is going on. So, okay, when we come back, I'll have moved the Soviets and we'll start pulling from the cup. Okay, so Soviet movement is done, and really not much to say here, guys. We moved forward what we could. Problem is, a lot of our new units that come on the board are not mechanized, so they kind of have low movement factors, and the mud reduces some of their movement anyway. So we sort of plodded forward where we could. I think it's about as good of a situation as the Soviets can manage, and we did advance now to meet the Axis line there. I think there's like one hex that I couldn't quite get into. Just if you're crossing through weird terrain with those infantry, I mean, sometimes you don't have to worry about terrain increases. Sometimes you do. And I'm just choosing a careful advance, get things in position. We're getting our guard armies kind of set up to strike hard at the Axis line. So really not much to talk about. This is going to be a boring episode. I feel like, I don't know. It's going to be under an hour, I'm sure. And maybe the only thing, maybe I should talk more, right? Give you guys some thoughts to chew on, I don't know. So we're gonna pick from the cup right now because that's the only thing we can do. And it is logistics. Well, guess what? Everybody's in supply. Everyone's great. Things are fine. That shit's done. We're gonna go back to the cup. Going back to the cup, what do we get? It's going to be either Axis move or combat. And we got Axis combat. Okay, so Axis combat. Now, in this game, weather doesn't have a direct effect on combat. So just to remind you where we're at, we're on a mud turn. So what does mud entail? -2 to Axis mech motor units, -1 to all other units. Mechs have no Zoc. German mechs don't have any Zoc anyway. No force march. Blah, 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 blah. So nothing really pertaining to combat except for bombardment by our air, or if we had any artillery left. So here's the question, right? We're going to get to attack, and then we're going to get to move. And if we really wanted to, we could use Manstein to get a little extra stuff going on. I still never flipped my air power back over. I'll need to do that here. But this is the question, right? What do we do with this combat? Do we actually attack anything? Is it worth it? Because this turn is going to be over very quickly. So any damage we do to the Soviets will be likely replenished, or the Soviets will be able to react to it in the intervening periods going into the next turn. Though the Axis will have initiative, so I guess, spoilers, the Axis will have initiative, which means they could follow up these activities with the ability to go first and pile on. So it might be something for me to think about. The Soviets will replace units. They'll put some new units on the board. But will we have had the ability to make some action happen here as the Axis? I'll need to think about that. Any counter punches we do now would really be aimed at getting better hex position for the summer. I'll have to look at that. So I'm going to take care of that, and then I will put either the movement shit next on the chart and do that, or the Manstein shit, and I will cut back in with video depending on where we're at, and if what needs to be explained here. Very slow turn in terms of like activity. It's going to be quick, but it's slow in terms of change in the game state. So let me take myself off recording. Let me see what combats make sense, if any, and then we will come back and take a look at what's going on. So I actually got fortunate, and in a couple of attacks with concentrated combat factors, I forced a retreat here, and I forced a retreat over here, which has now put us in a good position to attack the units that are threatening Orel. And so I think what I want to do is I want to do the Axis movement shit, just let that be drawn, and then I think we're going to do Manstein. And what I want to do with Manstein is activate the units around Orel and do concentrated attack on the units with the artillery piece, and that will give us another hex in front of Orel, and will hopefully be a better position just in general to defend that city and defend that area. So I don't think I can advance here. It just wouldn't be smart to do that. I might as well, hold my position there, but at least I don't really see a reason to poke my head out too much. Well, I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. So I'm going to do movement for the Axis, get a few things shuffled around here and improved, and then I'm going to do Manstein. And what's going to happen here with Manstein is if we use him now, and I'm going to refer to the rulebook just to make sure. We're going to place him 2 turns later on the turn record track. So that's going to put us right in the middle of the summer with the Axis initiative well underway. So now's a good time to do it in the turn to make some decent gains, and then we'll come back. He'll come back later, and we'll have another opportunity to use him in the summer, I think, is what we're going to do. So I'm going to do movement, and I'm going to do the Manstein activation in combat, and when I come back, hopefully the Axis will have, from their perspective, knocked the Soviets back away from Orel and have continued to hold a strong position there and shorten the line even a little bit and improve the situation. I mean, they're going to be under the guns of several guard armies now, which maybe all of this is for naught, but they're going to try and see what they can do. We'll be back. Well, I'll just cut right to it. The Axis succeeded in their goal here, so I managed to score a DR star result, which forced a step loss and a retreat, and now we were able to advance beyond Orel a little bit, even out the defensive combat factors in that area. So maybe a short-term gain here, but overall a good attempt, and during the movement, I threw some guys out there, and my thinking is, well, the Soviets are going to have to deal with them, so whatever guys we kind of throw out there once in a great while to be kind of an annoying force will be nice here as I jut out a little bit. And when the Axis goes first on the next turn, we actually, if we really wanted to, could make some attempts to create some annoying breaks through the line and even maybe some fun encirclements. It's doubtful, and I might change my mind as we come back around, and if I move first as the Axis, I'll pull that guy back, but I don't know. For fun, I threw him out there. And that really takes us to the end of the turn. So I did use Manstein. He'll come back on turn 23. I will have to open up this and organize the coming Soviet reinforcements and get everything situated there. But that was the quick turn there. So March, April 1943, over and done with pretty quickly. I've done what I can to shorten the line as the Axis, or at least have units pulled back enough to make use of themselves in time. Hopefully, from the Soviet perspective, our new powerful units we've got to the front will actually be able to operate here in the summer, but the Axis will be looking for their really last action with initiative. I'm pretty sure, starting on turn 25, it's going to be Soviet initiative for the rest of the game, I think. So I have to go look at the turn track, but I believe that's the case. So from here, all things are going to start shifting, and we'll see how it goes. And that's it. So end of video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit like. If you'd like to see more content like this, hit subscribe. I suspect if you're 21 videos into this series, you're probably subscribed already, or keeping an eye on Board Game Geek. We will look to do the next turn here soon, and I will continue to ponder the games to come that we will cover. Nevsky is likely, among other games. Also, I'm getting a war game for Christmas from my wife. I'm pretty sure I know what it was, because I basically told her what to get me, but we'll leave that as a surprise for maybe a post-Christmas video. So, we will see you in the next one, guys. Take care. Keep on gaming.